Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. I'm going to add some dye to a few shirts that I wasn't happy with. Let's face it, we all have shirts that don't turn out exactly the way we expected or envisioned them turning out. So I had a few of those and I just kind of let them pile up and decided to go ahead and add some dye over the top and see if I could fix them. I haven't soaked any of the shirts in a soda ash solution. Instead, I'm going to add the soda ash to my dye. I also have all the shirts turned the right direction. I don't have any of them turned inside out. So this first shirt was kind of a combination between a gravity dye and a tall deep scrunch. I didn't necessarily dislike this shirt, but I wasn't happy with the dark pink that was right over on the side. I thought it was just a little too intense. So I thought I would add some lines to the shirt and see if I could kind of mellow that out just a little bit. Maybe draw your eye away from that area. So I'm going to spiral the shirt and I'm going to start the spiral in the lower portion of the shirt. Then once I have it spiraled, I'm going to hold the folds in place with some rubber bands. I have this second shirt damp with just plain water as well, and I'm going to tie a side fanfold design in this one. Using a string and a washable marker, I'm going to draw an arc on the side of the shirt and then fanfold that line and tie it with some kite string. So this shirt was a gravity dye, and I love the colors of it and I love the dye movement, but you can see where I put the dye. I folded the shirt to see if it would make a difference to put a couple of folds in the shirt. And the horizontal lines going across the shirt are where the shirt was on the piece of vinyl guttering and where the dye was applied and the ice. Like I said, I love the colors and the dye movement on the shirt, but I don't like those horizontal lines on the shirt. So here again, I thought I would add something to the top of the shirt and see if I could take away some of the focus or emphasis on those horizontal lines. The horizontal lines on this shirt are part of the reason why now whenever I apply the dye to most of my gravity dyes, I try to place just a little bit of ice in the container or on the shirt before I apply the dye. It seems to be helping, and I haven't gotten any of these real severe lines like I did on this shirt. I'm not so sure that the severe lines are so much that I placed the dye directly on the shirt or that I folded the shirt before I placed the dye directly on the shirt. I think it's a combination of both of them. Okay, so here's the third shirt that I'm going to apply some dye to. And this one is totally dry. I thought I would see if I could tie the shirt when it's dry. So I haven't even dampened it with just plain water. For this one, I'm going to place a corner fanfold on the shirt. I'm going to use a piece of kite string or other kind of string and a washable marker and draw an arc on the corner part of the shirt. Then I'm going to fanfold that line and tie it with some kite string. This shirt was a starflower shirt that I just really wasn't happy with the way it turned out. I thought that there were some really interesting shapes in the very center part of it. I think a couple of them look like little alien faces and a lion laying down. But overall, I wasn't super excited about the shirt. So here again, I'm going to add something over the top and see what it looks like. I don't know about you guys, but if I have a shirt that doesn't turn out the way I want it to, or I don't particularly like it, a lot of times I will just kind of throw it to the side and leave it for a while. couple months ago, I mixed up some thickened chemical water, which I used to make paint, and painted on some dresses. I've kept the remainder of that thickened chemical water in my refrigerator, and I'd like to get rid of it. So I thought, well, let's try a couple things at one time. I decided to go ahead and use some of the thickened chemical water to mix up some dye for these shirts. That would hopefully use up most of the chemical water, and I could try something different on top of the shirts. These kind of shirts are great to experiment with. If it works out, then that's awesome. But if it doesn't work out, well, then I haven't wasted a shirt. I'm going to start with the spiral shirt, and I've already mixed up my dye. I used the thickened chemical water like I was talking about earlier, and it's really pretty thick because I initially mixed it to paint with, so I put quite a bit of sodium alginate into the chemical water. I'm using Nightshade from Dharma Trading Company, and I only mixed up 1/4 cup of the dye because I'm not going to use a whole lot of it. So to mix that, I used 1/4 cup of the thickened chemical water, and I only used 1 teaspoon of Nightshade. By the way, I always take my chemical water out of the refrigerator and let it come to room temperature before I mix it with dye. Then before I start applying it to the shirt, I'm going to mix in probably about a teaspoon of soda ash into the dye and mix it really well. I'm doing this just right before I start applying the dye because it's going to start reacting immediately with the dye and it won't be good for very long. So I need to get it applied to the shirt immediately. Otherwise, my colors aren't going to be real dark and vibrant. Then I'm going to use a foam craft brush and apply the dye to the top of the pleats. This dye is really thick, so it's just kind of sitting on top of the pleats or the folds. It's not soaking down into them very far. That's one reason why I didn't turn the shirt inside out. I knew that my thickened chemical water was really thick, and I wasn't entirely sure how well it would soak down into the shirt. So I wanted to go ahead and apply the dye directly to the top or the front side of the shirt. If you want a color that you're adding over the top to spread a little bit more and maybe soak into the shirt a little bit more, you can just use regular dye or just don't thicken it as much as I did. Like I said, I was just kind of experimenting and messing around and trying to use up some of the thickened chemical water I already had made. Once the dye is applied to one side, I'm going to turn it over and apply it to the other side as well. Once I have the dye applied to the shirt, I'm going to put the shirt down inside of a plastic toter container that I have a metal rack down in the bottom. And when I have all the shirts inside, I'm going to put the lid on the container and place it outside for a few hours to allow it to process in the summer heat. I'm going to leave the shirts for about 24 hours before I start to rinse them out. For the other two shirts, I am using Raven Black from Dharma Trading Company. And I mixed the dye the same way, except I added 2 teaspoons of dye instead of just 1 into the thickened chemical water. I also waited to add the soda ash to the dye until just before I applied the dye to the shirts. By the way, after I'm finished with the 2 shirts that I'm using the black dye on and the 1 shirt where I used the nightshade, I had to get rid of the remaining dye. If I had some other projects ready and was planning on using this dye, I could have gone ahead and used it until I ran out, but I didn't, and since I added the soda ash to the dye, it's not going to be good for very long. So I just went ahead and got rid of the dye after I finished these shirts. It's been 24 hours, so it's time to rinse out the shirts. Since the entire shirt wasn't soaked in soda ash, I don't really need to start rinsing in cold to rinse out the soda ash. Instead, I can go ahead to a warm or a hot rinse to try to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Since I didn't put a whole lot of dye on these shirts, there's not a whole lot of excess to rinse out. So the rinse out process is actually going pretty fast. After I've rinsed all 3 shirts, I'm going to put them into my washing machine and wash them on a hot water cycle along with some of Dharma's professional textile detergent. The shirts are out of the washer and dryer, and here's what they look like. The dye really didn't soak in very far, did it? I mean, I knew it was thick, but it's a lot thicker than I thought it was because the lines are not real wide. I don't mind it though. I don't think it looks bad, and I do think it does take away some of the focus and emphasis on that one dark pink area. I'm not quite sure on this shirt that adding the lines took away the focus from the horizontal lines. At least not when the shirt's laying flat. It does better when it's hanging on the mannequin. You don't notice those as much. So I guess that's a little bit of a win. On this last shirt, I don't know that I like tying it when it was totally dry. I don't think the lines are as defined and as pretty as they are on the other shirts. They are a little wider though, and that is something interesting that I did soak in a little bit more on the dry shirt. The other two were still damp from where I tied them because I immediately applied the dye. So the shirt did soak up a lot more dye when it was dry than the other two damp ones. So I do like that. I like the wider lines on this one, but that can be achieved by just using either dye that hasn't had any thickener added to it or chemical water that's not near as thick as this was. So what do you guys think? Drop me some comments down below and let me know. I am kind of on the fence about this. I'm glad that I tried something else on the shirts, and I'm glad that I got to use up some of the thickened chemical water I had mixed. But I'm not entirely sure that it's a huge improvement to each of the shirts. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. But if you guys have enjoyed this video and have enjoyed watching me experiment with these shirts, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.